Hey guys, welcome back to Emissary. Today we're going to be talking about conditionals. So what are conditionals? In JavaScript, conditionals help you to branch your code into different paths depending on a certain condition. So let's just jump right in here. So we're going to be using the keyword if. This starts a block of conditionals. So we're going to say if a certain condition. So in the brackets, we put our condition. So if you put something that always evaluates to true, then this if block will always run. So we're going to say if true, and here we're going to say console.log. Let's just say yes. And as you can see here, I'm running a JavaScript REPL. It's an extension you can get on VS Code. It's very helpful for debugging and seeing what your values are. And as we can see on the screen here, it is printing yes because this if block runs. Now, if we change this true to false, then you can see that it doesn't print it over here. And at the same time, this entire block is, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it is grayed out because the compiler knows that you will never reach here because false is never going to change. It's different from saying like if some variable x, because x could change down the road and then this condition would either be true or false depending on x. But in our case here, this will never run. So I guess VS Code knows just to kind of highlight that for us and say, hey, this is never even going to be reached. So if you put false in here, it never runs. If you put true, it always runs. Now, what if we want to put something that runs on a specific value? So let's use the example of a student. So we're going to say student GPA equals, let's say it's a 4.0. Very good student here. So we're going to say if student GPA, and then we're going to use the greater sign here. Greater here means strictly greater than this number. And since we're comparing two numbers, if you don't know the different types, I suggest you watch our last video on all the different types you can have in JavaScript. But with numbers, you can compare them one-to-one, and it'll tell you which one is greater than the other. So we use the greater sign for that. So we're going to say if student GPA is greater than 3, we're going to say console.log. We're going to say honors. This person made honors. Now, so you can see it already prints that for us because this person's GPA is greater than 3, and this is a strictly greater. So if you had a 3.0 on the dot, it wouldn't work. Instead, we probably want a greater than or equals to. And in my editor here, you can see this little ligature which comes on the bottom. But in yours, it might just be a greater sign and then an equals to. That's the way you do it. So we have if the student's GPA is greater or equal to 3.0, then he made honors. He or she made honors. Then we can say something like if student GPA greater or equal to 3.5, so if it's a really high GPA, then we can say that this person made the dean's list. As we can see, this person makes both the honors and the dean's list. Now, each of these ifs that we have, this block and this block, each of those blocks are starting a new sequence of conditionals, meaning that they will both run. So what if we wanted something that if it hits the first one, it doesn't hit the second one? So for example, or the other way around. So if the person has made the dean's list, then they do not get honors because they've already made the dean's list. So to do that, you put the first condition that you want to hit first. And here's a little trick that I can show you guys in VS Code is highlight what you want to move and hold Option on Macs, hold Alt on Windows, and then press up, 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 and it just moves that for you. Cool little trick there. So what do we want to do here? So we're going to say if for the first one, if student GPA greater than or equal. So this doesn't change. So they've made the dean's list. Here, so this actually should be an else if. We're going to say else if student GPA greater or equal to 3, then console.log honors. As you can see now, it doesn't print the honors anymore. That's because it already hit this first one, so it'll skip any other extra conditionals. Now with else if, we can attach more conditionals. So we can say else if student GPA greater than equal to 2.0. We can say console.log, and we're just going to say graduated. So if you need a 2.0 to graduate. So what we do is I saved and it formatted my code, but it hits this if, first of all, prints the dean's list, and then it skips both of these. So let's put this down a notch and see. As you can see here, now this person's in honors, but they don't hit the graduated. Technically, they've already graduated, but knowing that they got honors. So because we only wanted one of these conditions to run at a time. Now, what if we did a 2.7? As you can see here, they automatically hit the graduated. Now, we can do an else here, and we're going to do console.log fail. This person failed. So the else is it's like an otherwise. So if all of these other conditions are not met, then the else will always run. So always remember that if your else is at the end, it will always run. So adding an else statement always runs if all the others fail. If any of the other ones have been hit, then the else will not run. So that's why it's called else, because if all the other ones are not hit, then it'll hit the else. So be careful with else, because for example, if this was a 4, now that hits. But what if we had somebody's name here? Automatically this hits the fail, and we don't want that to happen. This shouldn't be computing these, because it doesn't it can't do greater equals with a name and a number. So what it's doing is it's going to the else and it's hitting that. So in this case, we actually don't want that comparison, because we didn't actually pass in. So we pass in a string here and not a number, and therefore all of the comparisons that are being done here with the numbers are not going to hit. And so instead it hits the else, which is the fail. And I threw this silly example in here to show you guys that the else always hits, and there is a kind of trend in JavaScript that if you do not need to put an else, then do not put it, because you will get funny stuff like this where you don't want it to happen. So in my case, I would say do not even put the else. Let's turn this back into a number. And as you can see, we hit honors. Let's put it to a 1.0, and it doesn't hit anything. We could also do else if for that last else. Else if student GPA less than or equal to less than 2.0, and here we can say they failed. Console.log fail. So here we are getting the fail. The person failed because their GPA is less than 2.0, and this is safer than having the else there and throwing in something random. Like even if we threw in a null value, for example, let's say the student's GPA has not been calculated yet based on his exam scores. They're still waiting. If that comes in as null, then you might be printing fail for no reason for the student, even though we're awaiting his results. So we want to get rid of that else, and we want to only check what we need to check. So that is what we can do here. So guys, be careful on those else's, and make sure that your if starts the block, and any subsequent condition is followed by an else if, so on, until you want your otherwise condition, which is your else. So that is conditionals in a quick little overview here. We're going to play around with them later on. As you'll see, we're going to use functions to make them more usable, having them just calculate based on some static static variable at the top is not, it's not as good as having it in a function where you can just continue passing in different values. So we're going to be using a function to show you how this works even better. And lastly, we're going to be showing you how these conditions are parsed into truthy and falsy values. And that's going to be in our next video, which will focus on the truthiness or the falsiness of values in JavaScript. And believe me, yeah, it sounds silly, but it is very complicated. So be sure to watch out for that video. It's coming up next. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you love to give us any feedback, please comment down below and tell us what you think. Tell us if this helped you. Tell us what you guys are actually focusing on here, what you're learning from this, or maybe what if we're going too fast, or any kind of feedback that you guys think would help us help you. And lastly, thank you guys for watching, and check us out on the next one.